Hey guys, this is Ray from Slavens Racing. Today we're going to be installing a Lucioli rear tube on a nice set of bulletproof wheels that we have here. So just hang out and watch. There's quite a few steps involved here, but it's overall pretty easy. We'll just get started. The cool part about this tube is it's a 7mm heavy duty rubber tube. Got 2 rim locks. This is perfect for hard enduro guys that want to run ultra low air pressure in tires. We're going to install it on this JX8 here today, which is just about the perfect tire for this tube. It allows you to run 4 psi and gets all this grip right to the ground so you can keep going straight up that hill without even stopping. There is a little bit of setup here, so we got to drill some holes in our rim. And I need to get this a little bit inflated first so it's straight out of the package, but we'll get that going here. So while we're waiting on our air compressor, we'll get our rim out. We're going to be putting this on a bulletproof rear wheel here. We're going to do all this work on our Rabiconda stand here. Got it already set up for us. So most of these wheels are only going to have 2 rim locks. The Lucioli here has 3 rim locks on here and the air pressure. So we're going to have to mark and drill an extra hole in here. So once we get this inflated and make sure we have all of our parts in the right place, I'll mark these holes and we'll get a hole drilled. So we'll mark our hole here. We want to be pretty accurate with this. We don't want to get way off and have our too big of holes or end up having to drill an extra large hole. There's a little bit of leeway with this setup, but still want to try to get pretty accurate. I'll mark that right in there. Make sure all those are correct. I was kind of try to index these to a certain spot just so I know it makes it easier on the back end to put it back together. So it looks pretty good. Go ahead and get our drill bit out. So it's calling for an 8mm hole. So we're right here next to the valve stem hole. We're going to put a 8mm hole right in the middle, right on the inside. We're going to drill from the inside out, and we're going to do it in a couple of different steps here. Try to get it right in the middle. I know there's guys out there freaking out right now that we're drilling holes in brand new rims. Don't worry, it'll be worth it. Test fit this a couple of times and make sure our hole's big enough and in the right place. If you make a mistake, it's not a big deal. We can always just move things a little bit. So we're going to pull all the caps and all the nuts off this right now. And as usual, I'm going to drop everything that I'm working on the floor at least half a dozen times. All right, so we're going to test fit, make sure all this lines up and works, make sure all our holes are big enough. I have a brand new rim, so I'm going to use some of these Motion Pro rim shields. It's going to keep that from getting all beat up. I'm going to use these a bunch. I resisted buying these for 25 years of riding and racing, and I always had dinged up, nasty rims. And for a few bucks, you can keep these looking brand new, so I highly suggest them. So they suggest that we test fit everything on here. For those of you that are wondering, and I have this question asked of me on these tubes quite a bit, what's the torque? 8 foot-pounds on these extra rim locks. One of the things I really like about these tubes is because these line everything up nice and even. If you've ever put a tube in and you have this guy pointing off in that direction and you're taking the wheel back off the rim, this is going to alleviate that every time. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's really annoying after you get a tire put back on and the valve stem's pointing the opposite way and possibly break off and cause you a flat. Looks pretty good. Looks like that's going to fit. So I'll go ahead and peel this back off. As you can tell, we have the valve stem out of there also. We don't need to have any air in it as of yet. Everything should line right back up when we put air in it. If you guys are thinking about just skipping steps in here, especially if you're drilling holes in your rim, your brand new rim, don't skip these steps. This is how you end up having stuff not right. It just takes a little bit of extra time to test fit, move these around. You'll be much happier in the long run. It'll be much easier to have your wheel done right the first time. Peel this guy back off. Look at that, no scratches. JX8, awesome off-road gummy tire. Low pressure like this. Don't be behind your friends if they're running this tire. This thing will fling rocks at you at 100 miles an hour just going down a dirt road. Hurts like crazy. Ask me how I know. Check your tire. Make sure it's not directional. This one is not. I haven't done a whole lot of JX8s. So I'm going to test fit that a little bit too. We're going to get a little bit of air and put in this tube so we can inflate it just a little bit, or at least get the wrinkles out of it. Also, we're going to use, I have some Bib Moose lube. They say use non-petroleum. This is a silicone-based lubricant. It's going to make this tire way easier to install. We have this. We also have the Nitro Lube from Nitro Moose that works just the same. They're virtually the same product. Throw this valve core stem back in here so we can put a little air back in this guy to make it easier to install. Got a Warp 9 valve tool. This is a pretty cool tool, especially if you're pulling a regular tube through this hole. But it's also got a little valve core tool. I'm going to go ahead and lube this guy up, throw him in the tire. I highly suggest using some of this, either this brand or the Nitro Moose, even on regular tubes. It makes it super easy to get all this stuff to move around. Put a little bit on your bead here. By the time you get everything in here, it'll be pretty well coated. Another reason I've got the gloves on is because this stuff is slimy and gross once you get it all on there. For tubes, you don't need a ton. So I generally just put that on there and then start working it around so I can get it nice. Make it a little slick. It makes everything a lot easier to install on tires. All right, so now we got a thorough mess on there. I'm gonna shove this in here first. These tubes are pretty stiff, so it is kind of like wrestling a bear a little bit. I always like to go around the lip on both sides. If you ever have trouble seating the beads on these things, put a little lube on there. Use a little soap and water if you don't have this. Make it nice and go on a lot easier. I'm going to take a bunch of that off my hands because that's how you lose teeth when tools flip out of your hands, especially doing tires. Step on one of these once and it goes all over the garage floor. That's why you put the cap back on. Checking for our direction again. So this will be the rotor side. I didn't really plan ahead. I just picked one side and went to town, so we're gonna put this one on rotor side up. So it's gonna be easier with these, and I know it sounds the opposite of what you're used to, is to get these guys started in here. So I'm gonna use my rim shield again. Especially with these guys, because this is going to be a bit of a pain to get these in. They're just so stiff. Most of the time you really don't need the rim shield until you get to the last bite. You're nice and careful about it. And just kind of eyeball these and line them up, because they are difficult at best to get in there. So I'm just going to put the washer and the nut on loosely, just to hold things in place. We're going to do the same with the valve stem side. And don't thread these on all the way. We're just going to get them nice and loose so that they don't pop back out. This guy down here a little ways. We're going to do this one last. It's going to make it a little bit easier, because we actually have to use, because these are such a stiff tube and have so much rubber, we're actually going to use the tire tool to get that into place. But we need to get the bottom part of the tire on the rim first. Don't get greedy, don't take too big a bite, or it'll be counterproductive. There we go. Now we're on. Just gonna move these out of the way. So we're actually gonna use the tool in here to get this back in place. That's inside the rim there. Work smarter, not harder, right? I'm just gonna snug these guys up a little bit. We're not gonna tighten them down yet. We wanna make sure we get the tire all the way on, and make sure once we get some air in it that everything's correct. You should not pinch these. I think you would have to be pretty good at pinching tubes to pinch a Lucioli tube. But I do want to snug them up just a little bit. That way it keeps the tube out of the way a little bit on the inside when we get to that point of fully inflating them. And we're making sure we're not cross-threading anything. And most of you guys at home are probably noticing that I'm not using the Rabiconda like most of you would. My tire changer is 30 years old, and it looks like something out of Mad Max, so we didn't think it would look good on camera. So I'm just going to use this Rabiconda. So don't flame me for not knowing how to use it real well, but it is an awesome tool. So I'm going to pull these off just to get started, to get around the sides here. And we're going to work from this part towards there, because it's going to be a little bit easier because there's more space taken up. We also don't want to tighten these down too much, because we still need to get inside the rim there. So, in fact, I may have actually screwed that up. well, no, still got to have a little loose here. Better make sure you have it a little loose and not tight, just right, because you still have to have enough room for the tire sidewall bead to drop in there. So we're gonna make sure we got plenty of room in there. We'll get it started the old-fashioned way here. All right, so we're gonna start on this side. We're gonna try and get this far one in first, work our way around. Keep working away around here. Now, one note if you're going to use these is you have to use them before you get to the last bite, or you're not going to be able to get them in. Now we're going to start running into a problem here where this side's going to come up. Ideally, I would spin this around and get this guy in there as two. We're just going to put another lever in here. There we go. And we've got it held there. There we go. Just going to keep on working around. Also take small bites. We don't want to try to take too much here at once, or you can break the bead on your brand new tire. Small bites till we get to this last part, and we'll be able to use the Rabiconda. Make sure this side's pushed in. There we go. Still need to get that seated down in there. Sometimes if you're struggling with this side of the wheel, you got to look to this side of the wheel, make sure that your tire is all the way down in the trough. And that goes for both sides. So I'm betting I'm struggling because the other side here is almost all seated all the way around. We're going to take this, push it down in the trough as much as we can. Also, one reason we lubed this so well around the rim is to keep that tire so it is nice and slick. We're just struggling a little bit with this last little bit. So we've got these all set here. Really all we need to do is put some air in this thing and get the rim locks to push up and the bead to seat. And we can torque our rim lock nuts down. Now we're just going to get the beads to seat on this guy. And we can go ahead and lock the rim locks down. So we're just waiting for that telltale sound of this bead popping out on both sides. It might take quite a few PSI to get this load up on there. But you got to make sure that the bead is seated first before you go ahead and tighten anything else down. Ooh, it's almost there. Ooh. That made everybody in the room happy when that thing went on there. Okay, so I don't need any more air after I get that guy pumped up, but I'm still gonna leave it inflated with, got about 30 PSI in there, which is fine for now. Put this guy away. By away, I mean scattered tools around me everywhere. So I can tell sometimes you need to run your finger around there, make sure that's all seated, but with that lube on there, and we can kind of see that it did that on its own. I'm gonna check both sides. They look good there. Yeah, all good. So I kind of had to work this guy up without the washer on there. That's fine. Just remember to pick it up from where you throw it down, or if it's lost in a crack in your garage, stumble around cursing for 30 minutes while you find that washer, and then you just go get another one out of your toolkit. That'll work too. These guys are all seated and in. They pushed out. They've made it a little loose. I like to, on rim locks with tubes or mooses, leave these super loose, and then when it pushes in, it'll expose some more threads. That way you know that the rim lock isn't bound back behind the tire, and you're not going to get any breakage. You're not going to pinch a tube. You know, the tube's pushing everything in. Same thing here. So we're going to move these over here where I can get to it with the wrench. Torque spec on these is 8 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench, so I'm just going to use my wily old arm torque wrench and get it to about what I think that is for right now. And I've been doing this long enough. You know, Jeff talks about the torqueaholics. I'm not one of those guys either. I'm an old school do-it-by-feel mechanic. I can usually tell when it's tight enough. Now you're going to have air pressure on the backside of this too, so don't worry too much about that. If you got to put a torque wrench to it, do it. It makes you feel better. That seems pretty close. I won't say it's perfect, but I won't say it's off by much either. I never put these on super tight. That's just from putting tubes on for years and years. I don't want them so tight that if the thing does slip a little bit, which these aren't because they have 2 rim locks and the air pressure holding them in, that'll break. But we'll just snug that one up a little bit as well. Just to keep it in place. So at this point, we're pretty much done. Got these guys torqued it in. This is all set. Throw my cap on there after I check the PSI. Now, the main reason that we have these big tubes like this, big heavy tubes, is so we don't get pinch flats. So you're gonna be able to run this guy as low as you want, really, but they call for about 4 PSI, but like gummy tires like this, you're really getting the advantage of this tube being able to run super low pressure and making this fit the ground. So if you're running hard enduro or even just trail riding, you ride on a lot of rocks, you just want a lot of grip. This Lucioli tube, this JX8, all this stuff is going to make that work really well for you. Everything you see here, you can get at Slavens Racing. Rabiconda tire machine, the 3-minute tire changer, Motion Pro tire rims, some sort of mousse lube. This is Michelin. I use this Warp 9 valve core tool and a Crank Brothers pump. All this stuff you can get here at Slavens Racing. Bulletproof wheel, and we have a large selection of gummy tires here in Slavens Racing. This is one of our favorite. We sell this to a lot of people. Dave's gonna sell you on a different tire. We all know what that guy likes. So I'm gonna suggest this JX8 or VE33 520 DC. Use this tube. There's several different sizes, so it'll fit your application. We have these in front and rear, and they will make your ride all that much better.